My name is Sylvia Harrison, and I am a court-appointed special advocate, and I'm also a staff member at Pulaski County CASA. CASAs are court-appointed special advocates who advocate for the best interests of children in foster care. They're everyday people that decide that they want to help children that are in need in foster care. I wanted to be a part of CASA when I learned about CASA because when I was a child, I was in foster care for 5 years with my baby sister. I grew up in Middle Tennessee, right outside of Nashville. I had a pretty normal childhood. I was raised by my mother and my stepfather. They were married for about 6 years, and we just lived a normal middle-class life. My mother was an LPN at a nursing home, and my stepdad was in the military. He was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and we just made our own life there. And I went to a great school. I went to a daycare after school, and we would come on Christmas and Thanksgiving to come see my mother's side of the family, and we just lived life together. We did real well together. My mom was a fantastic mom. Shortly after I was about 7 years old, my mother and my stepfather ended up getting a divorce. My mom had suffered from multiple miscarriages, and she ended up pregnant and having a baby full term, but ended up losing that baby. She never received the proper help, or she didn't have any resources really to help her with that depression. And I think honestly, mixed in with her childhood and those events happening, I think really made her struggle mentally, and she never really dealt with any of that. And that's what led her to her drug addiction. When Mom started using drugs and dating really just not so good men, we had really bad company over at our house, and situations that were very uncomfortable happened. However, we got to the process where my mom lost her job, we lost our house, we were hiding our car from the repo guy, and my whole world that was this normal everyday thing, scheduled all of that, to not knowing how we're going to live day to day. I missed school. A lot of what was normal started to be questionable. My mother ended up pregnant with my sister, my baby sister, and shortly after she had my sister, about 5 months later, we were left at a friend's house, and my mom never came back to get us. And so then the friend that we had been dropped off at, she called what we say in Middle Tennessee CPS and asked them to come and get me and my sister. The day that I came into care, I'll never forget it. I remember what I was wearing, what the office smelled like. I remember this man coming and picking my sister and I up. Nothing was really explained to me, and then they finally did find my mom a few hours later, and she came to the office, and I thought, okay, great, we're going home now. And the lady came in and informed us that I couldn't go home with her. And I will never forget that because, my mom looked terrible. I remember seeing her and just being like, man, something's wrong. Like, she's sick, something's happened to her. And they just said, we have to go put you in foster care. And I remember pulling my mom, wanting her to stay with me, her crying. And it was just a big traumatic event that I'll never forget. And my mom left, and we were placed in our very first placement. Luckily, I was able to keep a few items from my house when I was with my mom. I still had my stuffed animal named Weiner, a little puppy dog, and I had a blanket that my mom had gifted me. I think it's so important to remember that, children who are in foster care and children who aren't, they all have a baby, they have a lovey, they have something that they're attached to, and it's a sweet, beautiful thing. And so Weiner was that for me. If that stuffed animal could talk, she could tell some stories, because there were countless nights of crying and just, feeling very lonely and just very vulnerable. And she brought that sense of comfort because it reminded me of my mom. My sister and I were in foster care for 5 years, and throughout that time, we never had a CASA. And so we also didn't have anyone that was really consistent. We moved over 18 times, and, we were fortunate to have two really good placements. Luckily, my sister and I, year 3, were placed in a really good home for about a year, and they were fantastic. They made us be kids. They had real achievable expectations of us. They humanized my mother and made sure that she kept up with everything and still spoke to her like she was a human being, and just really, really appreciated the fact that we were going through a lot. They were in the military and had to move. And then, we had foster homes that's where we really experienced a lot of our physical, mental, and sexual abuse. And so unfortunately, my sister and I had to be separated. I don't think a lot of people really understand the impact of being separated from your sibling is. So it was my job to protect her. And we weren't getting consistent sibling visits. We weren't getting our connection that we had. We were with each other from the day that she was born, and then we were separated for 2 whole years until we were adopted. If I had a CASA, they would have made sure that we had sibling visits, that my mom's visits were consistent. They would explain to me what the process was going to look like, because nobody was explaining anything to me. But CASAs, our job and our goal is to be a built-in best friend, and we want our kids to trust us, and the only way that they can ever trust us is if we're present and we're consistent. Our mother's rights were terminated. We didn't know where my sister's father was, and so we were ready to be adopted. And I had a music teacher at my elementary school that was interested in adopting me. At the time, I thought she wanted my sister and I. And later on, I found out that she just wanted me. And I told her, we have to be adopted together, or I don't want to be adopted at all. And so whenever my pre-adopted placement came to me and said, look, we are not going to be able to adopt you, it was very traumatic for me. And then the very next day was September 11th. And I went to school, and that's, we watched the towers go down, and we saw all these horrific things, and people, a lot of kids and even staff were leaving early because we didn't know what was going on, and no one came and picked me up. And looking back on that day, I just remember feeling like this is hopeless, and we probably won't have many adoption options. Another reason why I love CASA is because we're consistent, we're involved, we're visiting once a month, we're calling consistently, we're at the schools, we are talking to therapists, we are making sure that we're in touch with DHS and everybody knows what's going on and we're on the same page. And I felt like for my sister and I, there were no pages. Like, it was just mass chaos all the time. Because there was no consistency, I just didn't trust most of the adults that I came in contact with, because anytime I had a question, it was, this is grown-up business, not children. Well, this is my life. It is my business. Unfortunately, we think because kids are in a foster placement that they're in a safe placement, and that's not always the case. 18 homes, multiple homes that I lived in, and I would like to even venture and say 50% were not safe places. I didn't experience abuse with my mother. Yes, neglect, but my mother would never harm me physically or sexually. And these people who were supposedly vetted and they did the most harm on us, CASAs, we come in and we make sure that everything looks great. Foster parents, homes with grandparents, it doesn't matter. We use the same tools and the same training for everybody. My mother had her faults and she needed a lot of help and a lot of into her as a child. I think that's why I like to humanize my mother and when I share my story, to let foster parents know that these are still their parents. This is where they come from. We can't change that. We can't make them have brand new parents, but we can appreciate some of the struggles. And I feel like my mom never thought she could do good enough. And I think that that's a challenge that a lot of our parents face. I've had foster parents say, she doesn't deserve you, she didn't even show up to court. That's not their place. Or instead of asking what happened to her, what's wrong with her? My mom is not the villain of this story. She is just a product of historical trauma, and she did the best she could with what she had. There are 3 women that I aspire to be like that played significant roles in my life in foster care. The first one was my 5th grade teacher, Beth Dykes. I struggled a lot in school. I had a learning disability I wasn't aware of, and I had this 5th grade teacher, and she was incredible, and she worked with me. The other woman that I aspire to be like is Laurel Nowak, the foster parent that my sister and I lived with for a year. She had us outside playing street hockey. She had us grilling on the grill and swimming in the pool together, and took us on vacations with them, and never excluded us from anything, and treated us like a family member. And my last foster mom that I lived with, I called her Nana. Her name's Geneva McKnight, and she was the foster parent that just let me be. She made sure that I was in therapy. She made sure that I really understand what my relationship was like with the Lord, and just really loved on me and met me where I was at. After being 2 years of separated, we were finally placed together and adopted together. It was great at first. The first year was fantastic. My sister and I are 8 years apart, so we were different ages at the time, 13 and 5, and we had to get to know each other again. We didn't go to therapy, though. I really feel like that would have been beneficial. And things just started getting a little trickier. There was some physical abuse and a lot of mental abuse, to the point where I couldn't take it anymore. And when I was 16, they offered that I can go back into care, or I could go move in with my maternal grandparents. It was heartbreaking, and I missed my sister. But when my sister turned 18, she did find me on Facebook, and we reconnected. A couple of months after I turned 16, my mother was gunned down and killed by her boyfriend. And it was a whole new level of hurt and anger. I was the only one in the house mourning at the time, and I was devastated, and I didn't know how to process that. And I felt very alone in that. Unfortunately, this man ended up going to prison years later because he was bragging about it in jail that he killed my mom. And he got 10 years but only served 5, and he's currently out. But I went to every single one of his parole hearings and begged for them to keep him in prison. And he got out for good behavior. In order for me to move on and be a good mom and to make good decisions in my life, I had to learn who she was and forgive her. And now I get to see my children in her. My girls look just like her. The freckles, the red hair, everything like that, their personalities. I feel like those are like little God winks here and there to let me know that, she's watching us. So in 2015, I was in junior auxiliary, and a woman from the local CASA program came and spoke to our girls about what CASA was about. I signed up, I did the training, and I became an advocate, and I got my first case, and it was 2 little boys and a precious young mom. When I got my first case and I met those little boys, it really made me understand my purpose in life. It just made me realize this is where I need to be. And I need to utilize every single thing, every single hardship that I went through, and make it into something good. I wish that my sister and I had a CASA, because I know there would have been a difference. I would have felt loved and appreciated, and having someone in my corner. We've got to have more CASAs. We have to be there for these kids, and we have to help make a difference.
My name is Jennifer White, and this is my husband,
Donald White.
And we have 2 grown biological children. And through the foster care system and adoption process, we have 4 bonus children. Even though we had been foster parents for about 10 years, it's about 8 years at that point, I didn't know what CASA was. We had never been assigned a CASA worker.
We had never worked with anyone that was brought to us from a CASA standpoint.
What a blessing that God gave us Sylvia as our first CASA worker. Sylvia was a great liaison for us to just keep us in the loop of what was happening, but also to be there for our boys and to make sure that they had the resources that they needed and that we knew about the resources that were out there for them.
Our last adoptive siblings, the boy's biological mother was really young. I think she was, 16? 15.
She was 14 when she had Keelan and 15 when she had Aiden. If you think about what could go wrong in a birth, it went wrong with Aiden. So he was a micro-preemie. He was born at 24 weeks. He was in the hospital for 6 months. He was on a ventilator for 2 months. He had multiple surgeries throughout that time. Aiden was 10 months and was 10 pounds. So he looked about like both of our biological boys were over 8 pounds when they were born. So he was pretty close to their newborn size.
I think it's by God's grace that Jen is a nurse. That was her profession. So it made it a little bit easier. So we had some health understanding whenever he was brought in. So that was a comfort to me, because to have a small child like that with that many medical issues, it's a little overwhelming, really.
Yeah. And he was failure to thrive. So we were feeding him every 3 hours around the clock for months until we could get his weight up to where it needed to be. And then you think about him now, and he's 10 years old, and he reads, and he rides a bike, and he loves to swim, and he loves Toby Mac. He loves to sing, and I mean, he is just a joy.
95% of the time. Yeah, I wouldn't want to mislead anybody, right? Is that the truth is that 95% of the time he's an absolute joy. There's 5% of struggle, right?
Yeah.
So that's the reality of parenting.
And then Keelan is 11. He just started 6th grade and is just one of the kindest children you'll ever meet. He really is just a little ray of sunshine. He's so smart and so patient. He loves to play with Aiden and is really one of Aiden's biggest advocates. He takes very good care of him.
Whenever we were in the fostering adopted, we tried to get sibling sets together so we could keep that relationship. And with Keelan and Aiden, I think it's been monumentally helpful, because Keelan is Aiden's best advocate. I mean, for his birthday, he's thinking about what he can get to give to Aiden. So, sweet child.
We're blessed. Sylvia's involvement in our case, I really can't explain how helpful it was. She brought calm and peace to it. She brought information. She brought resources, and just her. I mean, she's just a sweet, loving person, and another person that could love our boys.
We've extended her into our family, so to speak.
CASA is so needed, and that's a great avenue for someone that maybe can't take a child into their home but still wants to fight for children in the foster care system. And we are so blessed to have experienced that. Even if it was our last placement, now we know what CASA brings to the table.